Are back with part 2 of this week's reading of the Messianic Jewish Family Bible, Tree of Life version, TLV. And we are going to read the last part, the second part of chapter 15. And again, I just wanted to mention, I had mentioned when we were reading, I believe it might have been last week, I was talking about Hadad, but I was thinking about the Ben Hadad of this week's, and he plays a very significant role as we move forward. This is just a quick spoiler alert. We're going to hear that name again, and he does play a significant role in the Book of Kings. So we will be returning to that name, Ben Hadad, which Asa actually consulted with. The end of Jeroboam's line, Nadab, son of Jeroboam, began to reign over Israel in the second year of King Asa of Judah. And he reigned over Israel 2 years. He also did what was evil in Adonai's eyes, walking in the way of his father and in the sins that caused Israel to commit. In his sins, he actually made Israel commit sins as well. So we're talking now, again, we're going back and forth here. We're back to the northern kingdom. Then Baasa, son of Ahijah of the house of Issachar, conspired against him, and Baasa struck him down at Gibbethon, which belonged to the Philistines, while Nadab and all Israel were besieging Gibbethon. So Baasa slew him in the third year of King Asa of Judah, and became king in his place. As soon as he became king, he struck down all the household of Jeroboam. He did not spare Jeroboam anything with breath until he had destroyed him, just as was the word of Adonai that he spoke by the hand of his servant Ahijah the Shilonite. Because of the sins Jeroboam had committed and caused Israel to commit, by which he utterly provoked Adonai, God of Israel. Now the rest of the deeds of Nadab and all he did, are they not written in the books of the chronicles of the kings of Israel? So there was war between Asa and King Baasa of Israel all their days. In the third year of King Asa of Judah, Baasa son of Ahijah began to reign over all Israel in Tirzah, reigning 24 years. He did what was evil in Adonai's eyes and followed the way of Jeroboam and the sin that he made Israel to commit. So we're going to move on to chapter 16. Zimri ends Basa's line. Now the word of Adonai came to Jehu, son of Hanani, against Basa, saying, Since I raised you up from the dust and made you ruler over my people Israel, yet you have walked in the way of Jeroboam and have caused my people Israel to sin, vexing me with their sins, I am about to consume Basa and his house. I will make your house like the house of Jeroboam, son of Nebat. Anyone of Asa who dies in the city, the dogs will eat, and anyone who dies in the field, the birds of the sky will eat. Now the rest of the deeds of Basa and what he did and his might, are they not written in the book of Chronicles of the kings of Israel? Then Basa slept with his fathers and was buried in Tirzah, and his son Elah became king in his place. For the word of Adonai had already come by the hand of the prophet Jehu, son of Hanani, against Basa, and against his house, because of all of the evil he had done in Adonai's eyes, vexing him with the work of his hands, becoming thus like the house of Jeroboam, which he struck down. In the 26th year of King Asa of Judah, Elah, son of Basa, became king over Israel in Tirzah and reigned 2 years. Then his servant Zimri, Zimri, commander of half his chariotry, conspired against him while he was in Tirzah, making himself drunk in the house of Arza, who was in charge of the palace in Tirzah. Then Zimri went in, struck him down, and killed him in the 27th year of King Asa of Judah, and became king in his place. It came about when he became king, as soon as he sat on the throne, he struck down all the house of Baasa. So we have Zimri now in the northern kingdom and King Asa in the southern kingdom. Just want to try to keep some of this straight as we're moving forward, because it can get confusing because we're going back and forth. Um, so he struck down all the household of Basa, leaving him not even one man, nor his kinsmen, nor his friends. So Zimri destroyed the entire house of Basa, according to the word of Adonai, which he spoke against Basa by the prophet Jehu. For all the sins of Basa and the sins of the son of his son Elah, which they committed and caused Israel to commit, vexing Adonai, God of Israel, with their useless idols. Now the rest of the deeds of Elah and all that he did, are they not written in the book of Chronicles of the kings of Israel? The rise of Omri, Omri, in the 27th year of King Asa of Judah, Zimri reigned for 7 days in Tirzah. Now the people were encamped against Gibbethon of the Philistines. When the people encamped heard it, Zimri had conspired and even struck down the king. Then all Israel proclaimed Omri, the commander of the army, king over Israel, that very day in the camp. So now Zimri didn't last very long as king. Omri is now king of the northern tribes of the northern kingdom of Israel. Then Omri and all Israel with him went up from Gibbethon and all besieged Tirzah. When Zimri saw that the city was captured, he went into the citadel of the royal palace and burned down the royal palace over him with fire, so he died too, because of the sins which he committed, doing what was evil in Adonai's eyes, walking in the way of Jeroboam, and in the sin which he had committed, making Israel sin. Now the rest of the deeds of Zimri and his treason that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? Then the people of Israel were divided into 2 factions. Half of the people followed Tibni, son of Gineth, making him king, while the other half followed Omri. But the people following Omri prevailed against the people following Tibni, son of Gineth. Tibni died, and Omri became king. So at one point, actually, there was 3 kingdoms going on here, because of that split right there. But then it went back to the 2 kingdoms of of north and south. In the 31st year of King Asa of Judah, Omri began to reign over Israel and reigned 12 years, 6 years in Tirzah. Then he bought the hill of Samaria from Shemer, Shemer, for 2 talents of silver, and built a city on the hill. He named the city that he built Samaria, based on the name Shemer, the owner of the hill. But Omri did what was evil in Adonai's eyes, and acted more wickedly than all who were before him. For he walked in all the ways of Jeroboam son of Nebat, and in the sins that he caused Israel to commit, vexing Adonai, God of Israel, with their useless idols. Now the rest of the deeds of Omri that he did, and the valiant deeds that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel? So Omri slept with his fathers and was buried in Samaria. And now we go to Ahab, and this section is entitled Ahab Even Worse. Then his son Ahab became king in his place. In the 38th year of King Asa of Judah, Ahab, son of Omri, began to reign over Israel. And Ahab, son of Omri, reigned over Israel in Samaria 22 years. But Ahab, son of Omri, did what was evil in Adonai's sight more than all that were before him. So he is the worst of all so far. Now, as if it was a trifling thing to walk in the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, he also took a wife, Jezebel, the daughter of King Ethbaal, Ethbaal of the Sidonians, and went and served Baal and worshipped him. He also erected an altar for Baal in the temple of Baal that he had built in Samaria. Also Ahab made the Asherah pole. So Ahab did yet more to provoke the to provoke the Adonai, God of Israel, than all the kings of Israel who were before him. So he is the worst of the worst at this point, um, which is insane. But as we see, um, it is so. The curse of Jericho rebuilt. During his days, Hiel of Bethel rebuilt Jericho. At the cost of Abiram, his firstborn, at the cost, I'm sorry, I can't read today. At the cost of Abiram, his firstborn, he laid its foundation, and at the cost of his youngest son, Segub, he set up its gates according to the word of Adonai, which he had spoken through Joshua, son of Nun. So now we're going to meet up with Elijah the prophet in chapter 17 of 1 Kings. Elijah proclaims famine. Now Elijah the Tishbite, one of the settlers of Gilead, said to Ahab, "As Adonai God of Israel lives, before whom I stand, there shall be no dew or rain these years, except at my word." Then the word of Adonai came to him, saying, "Leave this place, turn eastward, and hide yourself by the wadi Cherith, east of the Jordan. It will come about that you will drink from the wadi. I have also commanded the ravens to feed you there." So he went and did according to the word of Adonai. He went and lived by the wadi Cherith, which is east of the Jordan. The ravens kept bringing him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the wadi. Then it came to pass after a while that the wadi dried up, because there was no rain in the land. Then the word of Adonai came to him, saying, "Arise, go to Zarephath of Sidon, and stay there. I have just commanded a widow there to provide for you." And the second part is the miracle of flour and oil. So he arose and went to Zarephath. Now, when he came to the town gate, to his surprise, a widow was there gathering sticks. So he called her and said, "Please bring a little water in a jar that I may drink." As she was going to fetch it, he called her and said, "Please bring me a morsel of bread in your hands." So she said, "As Adonai your God lives, I have nothing baked, only a handful of flour in the jar and a little oil in the jug. Now look, I am gathering a couple of sticks so that I may go in and prepare for me and my son, that we may eat it and die." Elijah said to her, "Fear not, go and do as you said, but first make me a little cake from what you have there. Bring it out to me, and afterward make some for you and your son. For thus says Adonai God of Israel, the jar of flour shall not be exhausted, nor shall the jug of oil be empty until the day Adonai sends rain on the land." So she went and did according to the word of Elijah, and she and he and her household ate for many days. The jar of flour was not exhausted, nor did the jug of oil become empty, according to the word of Adonai, which he spoke through Elijah. The last section of chapter 17 is resurrection of a boy. After these things, it came to pass that the son of the woman, the mistress of the house, fell sick, and his sickness was getting much worse until he had no breath left in him. So she said to Elijah, "What do I have to do with you, man of God? Have you come to me to remind me of my sin and kill my son?" He said to her, "Give me your son." Then he took him from her arms, carried him up to the upper room where he was staying, and laid him on his own bed. He cried out to Adonai and said, "Adonai, my God, have you brought such evil even on the widow with whom I am staying, because by causing her son to die?" Then he stretched himself upon the child 3 times. He cried out to Adonai and said, "Adonai, my God, please let this child's soul come back into his body." Adonai listened to the cry of Elijah, so the soul of the child came back into his body, and he was revived. Then Elijah took the child and brought him down from the upper room into the house and gave him to his mother. Elijah said, "See, your son is alive." Then the woman said to Elijah, "Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word in your mouth is true." And that is the end of chapter 17. And in Jacob, which is James in the Gentile Bible, chapter 5, verse 17, it says, "Elijah was a man with a nature like ours, and he prayed earnestly that it might not rain. And it did not rain on the earth for 3 years and 6 months. He prayed again, and the sky gave rain, and the earth produced its fruit." And we have just read too that he was able to raise this child from the dead, actually. And another footnote here takes us to Luke chapter 4, starting with verse 25. "But with all truthfulness I say to you that there were many widows in Israel in the days of Elijah, when heaven was closed for 3.5 years, and there came a great famine over the land. Elijah was not sent to any of them, but only to Zarephath in the land of Sidon, to a widow woman. There were many with leprosy in Israel in the time of Elisha, also the prophet, and none of them were purified apart from Naaman the Syrian, which we're gonna. That's actually a spoiler alert. So we will get to that when we talk about Elisha. Okay, we're going to go now into chapter 18. Elijah confronts Ahab. Now it was after many days that the word of Adonai came to Elijah in the 3rd year, saying, "Go show yourself to Ahab. Then I will send rain on the land." So Elijah went to show himself to Ahab. Now the famine was severe in Samaria. Ahab summoned Obadiah, who was the steward of the palace. Now Obadiah feared Adonai greatly, for when Jezebel was cutting off the prophets of Adonai, Obadiah took 100 prophets, hid them 50 to a cave, and provided them with bread and water. Then Ahab said to Obadiah, "Go through the land to all the springs of water and to all the wadis. Perhaps we may find grass, and so we keep the horses and mules alive and not lose all the animals." So they divided the land between them to explore it. Ahab went one way by himself, while Obadiah went another way by himself. As Obadiah was on the road, all of a sudden Elijah met him. When he recognized him, he fell on his face and said, "Is it you, my lord Elijah?" "It is I," he answered him. "Go tell your lord, look, Elijah is here." "How have I sinned," he replied, "that you are giving your servant into the hand of Ahab to put me to death? As Adonai your God lives, there is no nation or kingdom where my master has not sent to search for you." And when they said, "He is not here," he made that kingdom or nation swear that they could not find you. Now you're saying, "Go tell your lord, look, Elijah is here." But as soon as I leave you, the Ruach Adonai may carry you off where I wouldn't know. Then when I come and tell Ahab and he can't find you, he'll kill me. Now I, your servant, have feared Adonai since my youth. Wasn't my lord told what I did when Jezebel slaughtered the prophets of Adonai, how I hid 100 of Adonai's prophets, 50 to a cave, and provided them with bread and water? So now you say, "Go tell your lord, look, Elijah is here. He'll kill me." Then Elijah said, "As Adonai Sabaoth lives, before whom I stand, I will surely show myself to him today." So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him. Then Ahab went to meet Elijah. Now when Ahab saw Elijah, Ahab said to him, "Is it you, the one who causes trouble for Israel?" But he answered, "I have not troubled Israel. Rather, it is you and your father's house, by forsaking the mitzvot of Adonai and going after Balaam. Now then, send and gather to me all Israel at Mount Carmel, together with the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table." So the second part of this chapter is triumph on Mount Carmel. And I think I may pause this and come back with part 3. And that's what I'm going to do, because I'm looking like I'm at 18 minutes. I'm going to come back with the next part.